Fighting injustice at the speed of light. Here's your look at the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse, Injustice 2, The Flash. Once known as the fastest man alive, Barry Allen has hung up his boots in public shame after defecting from the regime. However, as a new enemy threatens the innocent, the Flash returns to action, determined to redeem himself. First, we'll measure off the Flash, and then we'll proceed with the rest of the review. We're going to take the tape measure right to the very top of his head, and we're going to stop it right there, revealing that Injustice 2 Flash stands 7.2 inches in height. Switching that over to centimeters, the figure stands 18.5, or almost 18.5. 18.4, though, to be exact. I suppose it would be helpful to bring in a couple of other figures for some size comparisons. So we can bring in a couple of recently looked at figures. One figure that has some difficulty, it seems, standing right now. There he is next to the Bizarro. And we just recently had a look also at John Stewart for some comparisons. A better comparison. We'll just move over Bizarro. Why don't we bring in the Scarlet Speedster? This is a traditional Flash. This was the Flash that was actually packaged along with Red Death. I feel probably, you know what? We'll just move this one over. This one is a better comparison, I'm sure, if you guys want to see the difference. Because you'll see probably as you're comparing it with a traditional looking Flash that Injustice 2 Flash is a little on the thick side. We'll postpone looking at the extra meaty Flash for the time being as we have a look at the accessories to come included with the figure. Again, a lot of samesies, though the trading card, of course, is going to be different. For the samesies end of things, it comes included with the same display stand that we've seen with many of the released DC Multiverse figures. You can see the printed DC logo down below, and again, a single peg up the top corner. Most of the figures have come included with the very same display stand we're looking at right now. The only exceptions to that rule have been some of the flying figures have come with the DC flight stands, the ones that McFarlane packs with only the select few. The other ones, though, get relegated to this standard stand, and that's fine and good for me. He also comes included with a trading card. I want to draw everyone's attention to the trading card, if I may. Everybody gather around, sit down, grab your s'more. I want to point out the fact that this may be one instance where the trading card isn't actually pulled from a source material like an illustration or screenshot, but rather instead it seems like that image is of the figure. Isn't it? I mean, you're looking at it. I see an ankle joint, and I certainly see figure articulation. This might be one of the only times we've actually got a figure picture as the thing that's on the front of the card. If this is pulled from the video game, unless they just didn't have the license available to use screenshots, I would have thought that a screenshot of the Flash from the game would have made more logical sense, and not simply just a photoshopped image of the figure itself. Anyways, on the back of the card, the source material is in fact Injustice 2, the video game from 2017, real name Barry Allen, height 5'11", and he apparently weighs 179 pounds. I say baloney. There's no way he looks 170 pounds. But anyways, that's the card. We'll go ahead and put that. I will go ahead and put that with the rest of my cards that I've been collecting along these ways. I'm going to just move that to the side. Again, I feel like the card's a little underwhelming, because again, they just use the image of the figure. Okay, so let's have a look and tackle the accessories that come included with Flash. As a running gag, I kind of consider to myself, I always feel like Flash, when he comes with these little construct pieces, I really think that they should also include instructions. Because 9 times out of 10, I can never really figure it out. It's like some elaborate puzzle to try to understand how these things are supposed to wrap around his body. We'll start with the more simplest things. He comes with a swooshing effect. It's been done with some rather nice looking translucent yellow plastic, but you sort of already understand how this would be looping around. It's just a loop that opens up in the front, so at least that opens up to fit. But this will fit around his leg. I guess technically it doesn't have to fit around his leg. It could fit around his arm as well if you want to. But I think I'd be more comfortable with the idea of putting it around his leg. And you could either have it this way, you can have it this way. I'm going to go with this way. And because this does open up, you're basically just clamping it onto his leg, providing, of course, you can actually open it up Stay open there, stay open there. We'll just fit that around his leg, and then from there we'll snake that around to the front. And you've got that little swooshing effect. Sort of a continuation of the lightning bolt that's on his ankle. So that's the simpler one. I suppose the next in line from that is this piece right here. It has a specific contour shape to it and mimics sort of a bush of electricity. I should really get into advertising. But it is made of a soft, translucent plastic, the same as the swoosh effect for his ankle. And to fit this in place, really what you'll want to do is kind of have it, see how it has a curve to it that should follow the curvature of his arm. When you put it through, you're actually putting it through this opening here. At least that's what I'm going with. If you feed the fist through, excuse the shrubbery here, and then just bring it down all the way like this, and then slide it up his arm. Then from there, again, you can take the vines and just wrap them around his arm like that, and you have this effect. Not bad, right? Yeah, not bad. Let's move on to complicated territory. We'll just put the figure down here for a second. Get him, hopefully, to stand while doing this. And we'll look at this. Again, we're now upping the experience level, I feel, when I'm trying to get this wrapped around his body. We have this, a coiled effect of electricity. Still, same soft plastic. And then you've got yourself an energy orb on the end of it. Now, I mean, you can look at it and sort of just guess for yourself how that would wrap around his body, right? You'd feed the arms through. Right there, right there. Yeah, it seems like on paper it would be a pretty easy thing to do. But it's not. You just basically feed the arm through. It's kind of like a small child finding his way through a very dense forest, playing maybe hide and go seek. But you're basically just taking the arm and just more hoping for the best than anything else. It doesn't also help the fact that he's got really large arms. And he's large really all over. Basically, I'm just doing is I'm bringing this all the way up. Just fitting the arm into these electricity sleeves. And then you can kind of wrap his hand around like this. I mean, there are a few little other holes that you could try to navigate an arm through, but I feel like that's way too small. That kid's going to get stuck in the forest. So instead, I'm only going to just feed this around. And then from there, I guess you can kind of twist this around his hand. I don't know. And you have something that looks like that. You may have more success doing this than me. You may have less success doing this than me. But we're going to go ahead and stick with this for the time being. It's close enough, I feel. And short of not actually having instructions to come include with the figure, this is what I'm going to work with. I'm sure when it comes to also displaying this figure in my collection of DC Multiverse figures, I'm probably going to do this as a one and we're done. Do this once, walk away from it, and never try to do this again. There's just a whole lot of spiraling, having to navigate through it. At the end of the day, it's close enough for me. And I mean, it does look neat, but it's just so super complicated to have to try to feed the arm through. If you have had better luck than me doing this, then congratulations, you've had better luck than me doing this. Now that we've overcomplicated matters with the energy effects, which for this now moving forward in the review, I ended up just removing it anyways. I would never be able to start looking at the details on the sleeves, nor be able to move the arms with all the complicated mess all over the place. So I did reverse all the work that I spent so much time actually doing. I just took them right off. Okay, moving actually on to the figure now. We can start first with his face. I feel like with Injustice 2 Flash, you're either going to like the designs of these characters or you're going to loathe them. I guess there could be some middle territory. I wouldn't necessarily say I loathe the designs. That's awfully harsh wording. But I will say I'm not a big fan of this figure. A lot of it really has to do with I just didn't like the design of Flash from Injustice 2 anyways. And what you're getting at it as a positive point to this figure, you're getting a pretty good version of this character based on that video game. But again, if you don't like the source material, you're probably that's going to inherit dislike for this figure here, which is sort of where I am right now. It's a very thick looking Flash. And again, if you guys need the comparisons just to further reiterate that, bringing in a regular Flash, You can almost even see why he's making a face like this. You have a more lean, mean, and trimmed Flash versus, well, a much not so much lean, mean, trim Flash. His proportions are very large. Again, I have to question his weight of being 179 pounds. There's no way you could pack this on and still manage to clock at 179. I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. But let's get a closer look at his head sculpt. We'll speak of the positive points, even if you don't really like the design of the character. The paint is really good on this. The gold and use of it on both the little angled lightning bolt effects that he's got on the sides of his helmet, as well as the lightning bolts that he has on the top, are painted pretty good. I can also say that I like his eyes. His eyes are a little on the small side, or could it just be the fact that his mouth, his chin is very large, that it ends up making his eyes, as a result of it, much smaller. I do at least like the fact that they put the little reflection of light there on the corners of his eyes. That gives a little bit of extra life. His face is a little chalky. A little on the little chalky side there. But, you know, the mouth is okay. He's just a really full-faced Flash. And then, of course, when you go from that, fullness will still be a continued trend you'll see with this figure. I'll try not to point too much to it, but you can clearly see that this Flash is a little on the fuller side. I do like this. I like the raised emblem, and I do specifically like this particular Flash logo. It's not all granted this color here, this kind of burgundy red. In fact, there's a darker color it seems like they've actually painted in, rather instead of using just the coloring of the plastic there. There is some nice texturing and pattern work to the costume, so it's not all just the samesies while you're looking at it. In fact, you have some areas that are mesh, kind of very small knit mesh. You got smoother sections you could imagine be almost like a leather material. And then you've got something you would almost even expect to see on Aquaman, or even Deathstroke, almost a chainmail effect. For this, only just the sculpt succeeds in bringing something to the table for the figure, because there's really very little in the way of paint. In fact, what paint you do end up seeing is just the gold, and it's trimmed. I mean, it's nicely trimmed. I'm not going to find fault with that. And for the very small strands of it, even on the sides of his arm, for example, it's cleanly applied. I mean, there's no real hiccups necessarily, even on his back as well. For what gold there is on it, it does look like it's been painted pretty good. And of course, as we rotate the figure around, there is a lot to kind of pull in here. In a way, it kind of reminds me of the TV series Flash costume, where there was a lot of additional material textures that they used. It wasn't just this material here. Again, you've got a lot of busyness going on here. Some could say too busy. Some would say not busy enough. I think we have to have conversations with those individuals. But there's definitely a lot of texturing here. But all of it is just this burgundy plastic. I can't necessarily say that they would have to find a reason to go in there and bring some extra color. Yeah, there could have been an opportunity where maybe like this meshing, for example, could have been a darker shadowing or darker shade of this burgundy color that they used right here. It's pretty much just all plastic color on top of plastic color. Maybe they could have even dry brushed a darker color over top of this just to make some of those panels stand out a little bit more. Maybe this could have been enhanced a little bit more. As a positive thing, certainly the figure has a lot to look at. Again, that may be good or bad. I just overall don't like the look of this character from the video game. And I find, honestly, if I could be completely honest about it, I don't find it translates well to a figure I'm really going to enjoy having in my collection. What can you have in your collection? Ouch. Let's have a look, though, at the posability on Injustice 2 Flash. His head rotates all the way around. While you're, of course, doing this, just be careful of these. You don't want to clip those and bend those by mistake. The head moves up, well, somewhat up, down, and you can also move it back and forth as well. Traditional articulation is found on this Flash, although when you're doing it, you're finding it with much thicker limbs. Sorry, I keep drawing everyone's attention to it. Like his arms hinge out, they're just really on the tight side, and you can pull off about a 90-degree angle bend. You can also rotate Flash's arm all the way around. You probably have seen it already on this side. This arm gets really hung up. It's almost like it's getting stuck on itself, and I'm not really sure what is hanging up the joint in here. Maybe it's this part right here is getting stuck against that socket joint for his shoulders. Speaking of his socket joint, this allows the arms to move a little bit more forward in, and you can also hinge the arm out a little bit more because that socket joint's there. He does have a swivel at the bicep, very thick bicep. He has a double hinge on the elbow, and then he also has articulation in the hands. I can certainly see that the quota for plastic producing really went more into the constructs. I feel, if anything, Flash, really should have come included with some flat or running hands, something that you could have pulled out from the sockets of the form and replaced with, because he only has just a closed fist, and then he's got a hand that almost looks like he's asking for spare change. Really would have liked to have gotten like a flat hand or just a couple of relaxed hands, so at least I could have swapped this one out here. But he has an upper torso ball joint, continuing on with the rest of the figure's articulation, and then he also has a lower torso ball joint as well. I do also want to praise McFarlane Toys for doing this as well. You'll see it as I'm moving the torso piece back. See how it moves forward? Well, you can see that moving forward, but when I move it back, they still finish the line painting here. Because really, when you move it forward, you're not going to see that additional gold panel lining. It's hidden. It's underneath his kind of belt area. So when you move it back, I like that they still finished the job and continued the gold all the way down. So it still looks seamless. Continues on with the rest of the lines that go all the way down his legs. Speaking of his legs hinge out at a full, almost Van Damme splits. You can bring the legs forward and back. This, by the way, is a softer plastic. The lower half of his torso is. He does have a swivel at the top of the thigh. He has a double hinge on the knee. Straighten that out. And then when it comes to his feet move back and forth. You have an ankle pivot, and then you also have toe articulation as well. Flash is a very complicated figure for me, at least, because on paper, it's a character design I don't care for. I have to then still be looking at this figure with an unbiased opinion. If, let's just say, as we run with the rest of this review, let's just say I like the design of the character from the video games, then automatically taking a character that's pretty accurate to the way he looks in the video game probably would then result in me having a more positive experience looking at this figure. The unfortunate end of it, though, is while already going into this review right from the beginning with a biased opinion towards the way he looked in the game, a little on the thicker side, and this particular designed costume, none of those things I would check off as things I would want to see in Flash. As a result of it, it ends up being a figure that I honestly only really picked up to review. If I honestly wanted to just pick up the figures based on the ones that I really liked, Flash, I feel, or Injustice 2 Flash, I don't think would have been anywhere near on a list of figures I would have picked up for my own personal collection. Reviewing figures can sometimes be a complicated matter, because you're not always buying for your own collection. Sometimes I've had this happen myself, and in fact, even in the last couple of reviews, this has happened. I have wanted to pick up figures more so to show you guys the figures that make up a wave. But certain figures, like Flash for example, if I wasn't reviewing them, I probably would have passed on them altogether. It's not necessarily a fault on Flash's part, nor McFarlane Toys. They gave us a pretty good likeness of Flash pulled from the Injustice 2 video game. Now, me going into that, not already liking the costume, not already liking the fact that Flash was a little on the thick side. Again, this isn't a figure I normally would have picked up, and when it comes to reviewing him, I have to try to approach it with a somewhat unbiased opinion. I can try to look at the positives, and every figure, whether you like the design or not, has positive points that can be made, and that can have negative points. From a positive standpoint, there's a lot of good texturing that they've incorporated to the costuming. And certainly from a paint standpoint, the gold, and that really is the only paint that's on the figure's body, but at least the gold that's applied is applied pretty clean. And there's no real messy issues where the gold is bled onto the red burgundy plastic around it. The head sculpt is okay, again, if you like this design of Flash. And then you've got the Flash effects, or the Speed Force effects, which again, I really feel in cases like that, if there's a certain way that they have to go around the figure's body, it would be appreciative that they could include instructions. You don't have to follow the instructions exactly, but at least kind of give me some idea. You could say I'm hot or I'm cold or I'm getting warmer as I'm wrapping it around the figure's body. I think I did a pretty good job, an okay job in this review of actually getting those speed effects around his limbs. But when it comes to certainly displaying him, honestly, I don't even know if I'm going to end up putting this one on my collection space. I mean, I already have DC Multiverse figures that truly I do like. Truly, if I wasn't doing this reviewing thing, I still would have picked up and put in my collection. Injustice 2 Flash isn't on that list. I mean, just honestly, I don't like the look of him in the game. And even though I, again, tried to mention the things I liked about the figure, it's definitely not a figure I would have bought for my own personal collection space. What do you guys think of Injustice 2 Flash? Let me know down below in the comments section. Again, you either like this figure or you don't. If you don't like it, you're probably going to pass on him altogether. But the ones that did like the Injustice 2 game and liked specifically the Scarlet Speedster as he looks in the game would be probably more inclined to pick this figure up and add it to their own collection. But I always like reading your comments down below. Weigh in, members of the mob. Let me know what you guys think of this figure. And if certainly you are new to this channel and enjoying all the content you're seeing, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below, turn the bell notification on, and that, yes, come back to this channel, because I promise there are going to be other figure reviews of DC Multiverse figures that I actually do like. One of which happens to be a villain for the Scarlet Speedster. I'll leave it to you guys to guess who that is. Lots of stuff coming your way, guys. So as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.